right, guys, I want to look at this Mentis video here. We got one from Mentis Wave. Communist Reddit memes are pure cope. This one was from 3 weeks ago. Like, I haven't had time to take a look at it, so we'll take a look at it now. All right, here we go. I like Mentis videos a lot. Thoughts and ideas are not phantoms. They are real things. Although intangible and immaterial, they are factors in bringing up changes in the realm of the tangible and material things.
Hey internets, so there's actually a lot of communist memes out there if you're willing to look for them. And a lot of them tend to be bad, and I mean really, really bad. Many of them are just often copies of rightoid memes that have been subverted, and others are just plain boring, uninspired, giving off this kind of how do you do fellow kids energy. But the more interesting ones are the ones that, to the average person, may just not make any sense at all. You see it, you can tell that it's a meme, but it just kind of eludes you what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, I've studied both communist economics and non-communist economics. And so in this video, I'm going to help you decipher some of the more obscure communist memes and help you understand just kind of the bizarre copes and weird dog whistles that go into these. Let's start with this meme, the free market and then the really, really free market.
I've been waiting for, they've been saying that everyone's been doing communism wrong. They just keep doing it wrong, like over and over and over again. You just keep doing it wrong.
With the really free market guy saying, no, really, everything is free, take what you want, friends. And then the free market doge, depicted as the crying doge, says, I depend on state violence to procure compliant wage laborers. Oh boy. But what's interesting here is that there's a lot of layers to this nonsense that the average person might not know.
Wait, what? Hold on. Hold on. I'm trying to parse this. The really free market, no really, and they use like the buff doge. No, really, everything is free. Take what you want, friends. And then the free market is I depend on state violence to procure compliant wage laborers.
Necessarily pick up on. But there's one thing that it shows immediately, which is that communists are kind of logic blind. One of the things I've been noticing more and more, especially when studying some more obscure...
I don't think it's just communists, bro. But I've noticed this as well, that a lot of people are logic blind. It's kind of wild.
Leftist theory. For instance, I was reading through
It was like a lot more, it's a lot more than I thought originally. It's kind of crazy. It's like every year I'm just shocked and surprised.
Jobs recently on revolutionary continuity and
it's like okay, you know how like the first time I read like that shit post about the breakfast question? The very first time I read that, I was like, bro, there's no fucking way. This is bullshit. Like this is haha pretty funny, but like this isn't real. And then, like, slowly, as the months pass from me experiencing that meme, I've been like, oh shit. Oh shit, maybe it is real. And then just like the more and more, as the months pass, I'm just getting deeper and deeper into like being like completely blackpilled on everything. Like,
spoiler alert, just to keep things really short and simple.
The breakfast shit post is it's basically it's so somebody claimed anonymously that they I'm trying to remember, correct me if I'm getting this wrong. Somebody claimed that they were aware of or a part of a research study in which the participants were asked how they would feel if they didn't have breakfast in the morning. And a lot of people basically said, but I did have breakfast in the morning. And then the question was like, said, how would you feel though if you didn't have breakfast? And they would be like, no, but I did have breakfast. So it's basically like a inability to simulate the inability to simulate a meta world, basically. Does that make sense? It's like you cannot like craft. I guess you would just say it like a hypothetical, basically, right? Like you would have because in order to discuss philosophy, you have to in order to discuss a lot of things, philosophy included, you have to kind of, especially in a world where like facts are like a lot harder to there's a lot of conflicting facts, right? Like you have like research that you have like it's going to turn into like an issue of like, well, A is better than B. And then the other person goes, well, my research shows that B is better than A. And then the other person goes, well, my research shows that A is better than B. So you can't really like discuss anything unless you like create a scenario in which you can say factually A is better than B. So then what do you believe in the situation that A is better than B? You have to like basically create a meta world in which you discuss philosophy in. Otherwise, it's really, really hard. I don't know if that made sense. But it's how you would discuss these things, like philosophical topics. And so I thought that was impossible. I was like, there's no way there's people like that can't understand like that level of that level of logic. And then I realized, oh shit, it's fucking real. And like every day that like, every week, every month that has passed since then, I've been seeing it more and more. And it's quite shocking is what I'm going to say. Like it's almost depressing, like it's I don't know how to explain it. Basically, it's impossible for us to understand each other. That no language barrier could. The reason it's depressing is because it's like the language, like it's not a language barrier. It's basically impossible. It's impossible to have like a conversation, basically, of any sort of substance. The barrier is no longer linguistic. Does that make sense? It's no longer linguistic, factual, or it's not a part of a worldview. It's like a hard limit. Like it's a hardware limit. You know what I mean? Like okay, the best way to explain it is like, yo, you want to play fucking video games with your friend and you want to play really bad with them, but then their computer just can't fucking handle it. Like their computer crashes every time they get into the server, but you really want to play with your friend. That's kind of what it feels like.
It's pretty stupid. And that's really what this meme does. It just kind of completely ignores the concept of incentives. If you just try to make everything free, then there's nothing really to stop an outsider from just taking it. It's kind of the problem with the honor system. It doesn't...
Untracker says, how can we even talk to the other side when the words have one meaning for us and mean something entirely to them? Yeah, and that's why like language matters, right? Like being able to define like, and this is why you hear this a lot, where I'll say something like, what do you mean by that? Like, can you define this, right? And the reason I say that is because if you can't even agree on like what something means, you can't even have a discussion. But then like people get kind of mad when you say that. Like when you say like, well, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate? Or like, can you define that? Like people will get mad at you for that. Right? Like people get irritated, but it's like the reason why you ask that. Or you say something like, oh, can you tell me my argument back? Right? Steelman is essentially like, can you steelman my argument? Right? The reason you ask those things is because you want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding in what your argument is. Right? I'm not doing it because I think you're stupid. I'm doing it because it's like I need to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. I tried getting someone to define a microaggression and they couldn't. Yeah. Well, I mean, how could you possibly discuss what it is if like you can't define it, right? Anyway, yeah. This has been like a struggle, honestly, for me.
Scale very well. For example, imagine if you have a town and they all agree that all of the money that they get, they're just gonna keep that money in the center of the town. And whenever anybody needs anything, they can just go and take what they need. And the problem with this is that the number of dishonest people you need in your town in order for this system to not work is one. You see, the problem with communists is that they think that they can somehow extend...
The problem with communism is that it ignores human nature. So like, communism in a vacuum, like, as a system, it makes sense. Like, it would work in a world where everybody is on board with it. So, for instance, it might work in a smaller form of society. So, like, maybe, like, again, like a family, an extended family, even maybe a commune, it might work that way. But even communes have rules where there's, like, If you're a bad actor, you get kicked out. Bernie Sanders. But anyway, wait, was that Bernie? That was Bernie, right? Was that Bernie or was that Joe? I think it was Bernie. That was Bernie. But yeah, basically, it works in like a microcosm like that, right? Because you have less people, and then like you can kind of like vet people according to like their culture and like make sure that they're a good fit for it, right? But the problem is it doesn't apply to like a whole society because again, human nature. What Mentis said is true here, that all it takes is one bad actor to ruin the entire system. That's the problem with communism, is it ignores, and this is the problem not just with communism but with a lot of like leftist thought, is that it ignores human nature completely. It does things that sound nice, they sound kind. Welfare sounds nice, sounds kind, sounds like something we should do, to maximum effect. But again, you ignore human nature, you ignore it's why. And by the way, I'm acutely aware of this as a game designer, because when I create a game, when I create game systems, I have to assume that people are gonna fucking cheat. You have to like assume that like your wording is going to be taken like out of context. You have to assume that they're going to try to find some way to like fuck with the rules for an advantage for themselves and do something against the intended design. Yeah.
A way of thinking that works for the family to all of society. So it's a very, very naive way of thinking. But what's more important is that when you understand economic theory on the macro level, you realize that the Doge on the left here actually isn't a free market. Because if someone doesn't want to give their stuff away for free, how do you make everything free? Well, the answer is you'd have to force them, and that's called theft. Which then just immediately reveals just how silly the straw man on the right is. Mm-hmm. So the actual free market, the one that depends on voluntary exchanges, depends on state violence. Okay, this just immediately brings up the question, does it count as an action of the state if a shop owner defends his own goods from theft? If people are trying to rob him and he pulls out a shotgun, is he the state now? Logical conclusions of this from a philosophical perspective are just completely ridiculous. It's effectively implying that authoritarianism is when you defend yourself from theft. It's fascinating, really. The more you analyze this meme, the stupider it reveals itself to be. But what's disgusting is that communists will often make things like this simply as a way so that they can equivocate later during debates. I have unironically seen communists equivocate during debates claiming that they want to have a free market. Of course they're lying, because when they say free market they actually mean this nonsense, but that doesn't matter. So long as they can equivocate based on a completely illogical argument, they can try to get away with it. Which is weird, because the Doge meme specifically can be a very good meme even when it has no politicization attached to it. In fact, just for the heck of it, I'm gonna have my own example of that meme where it's literally just the Doge meme on sale on my merch store, back by popular demand.
Wow, what a good plug.
Meme as a shirt or as a nice mug. And I'll keep those on sale for about a week or two. But anyways, let's move on to a meme that shows even more interesting things that are going on in the communist mentality. Behold the victims of communism. And of course, it's a bunch of leaders of some various fascist regimes during the mid-1900s. Now, aside from this just being somewhat historically inaccurate, it's important to understand that there's actually a very big cope baked into this. You see, a lot of commies, especially the young teenage commies, they often like being communist to make their entire identity be anti-fascist. It's kind of their way of always wanting to be seen as the good guys trademark. However, there's a problem with this from a historical perspective, which is that when you really study the regime of the
it's kind of funny because I feel like a lot of people are like rebels against, they're like rebels without a cause. They just want to rebel and they don't even know what they're rebelling against. Like if you ask them, you're like, what are you even against here? They can't even answer it. They just want to wild out, you know?
Soviet Union over Joseph Stalin, and of course Nazi Germany, you find out that they're actually very similar to each other. There's mountains of evidence showing their similarity. Both were extremely oppressive authoritarian regimes, where the state heavily interfered with the voluntary exchange of goods and services. And there's an extremely long video from Tick History out there on this, but a simpler way to understand it, if you just read Hans Hermann Hoppe on a theory of socialism and capitalism, you'll come to understand that pretty much all economies are really just mixtures of capitalism and socialism to some degree. It has to do with how much the state interferes with that voluntary exchange of goods and services. And then when you take that understanding and you look at these mid-1900s regimes...
That's pretty funny.
again, you'll realize that they're actually very similar. And now this, of course, creates an identity crisis for the commies. They can't accept the fact that their entire self-identity is based on a lie. They don't want to accept the fact that communism and fascism are very close to each other on the...
It happens a lot too, where these people, they'll be anti-fascist. They'll say like, oh, you're like a Nazi and stuff like that. How many times have you guys heard this? Where a person will be like, they'll be like, I'm an anti-fascist. I hate Nazis. You're a Nazi? And if you don't believe in X, you're not a person. How many of you guys have heard that before? It's actually fucking hilarious. It's so funny. It's freaking hilarious because it's like, the irony is insane. There's like so much irony there because that's what all of those fascist regimes used in order to do whatever they wanted to people. Is they basically said that they're not people. So it's kind of wild. Like, it's kind of wild that it's always like the anti-fascist hate Nazi people that like literally do what Nazis do. The world is funny. The world is very funny. It is quite entertaining.
Economic freedom scale, and to what degree the state ends up interfering with people's daily lives. And so one of their go-to copes of this is to point out the fact that, hey, the Soviet Union fought against Nazi Germany in World War II, with their logic being that because they fought against each other, then they must be very different, which is just from a historical perspective completely nonsense. States with similar systems have fought amongst each other all the time, and it's actually kind of weird. It's almost like they're expecting us to just forget the first few thousand years of human history, where various monarchist republics fought amongst each other all the freaking time. There's actually very little about being similar to each other that prevents nations from fighting. And so when they say, oh, well, the Soviet Union fought against Nazi Germany, it's a completely arbitrary argument. It's pure cope. But what's more interesting is when you understand what kind of similarity does prevent nations from fighting amongst each other. And that is when nations actually are more towards the scale of free markets. Nations with higher levels of economic freedom, the nations that interfere the least with, again, the voluntary exchange of goods and services, are less likely to fight amongst each other. This is actually another very interesting pattern we've seen in the last 2 centuries or so. And the reason why this happens is actually fairly obvious when you think about it from
it's because like your economies become like kind of more intertwined. At least I think this is what he's gonna say. Is that the economies become like a little bit, they become more intertwined, so it becomes like not in your best interest to like blow people up.
Perspective of incentives, you know, that wonderful concept that communists like to again ignore, which in reality is very straightforward. When you have two nations that are more towards the scale of being an open and free market, they both reach a point where when they want to get something from each other, it becomes less expensive to just simply trade that something with each other than it does to engage in a costly war to get what they want. That's really it. It just comes down to economic incentives.
Yeah, because war is really expensive. Like one of those fucking, like, how much were those bombs? Those freaking bunker buster bombs. How much is a bunker buster? Bro, 400 million per fucking missile. That's crazy. Man, 400 to 500 million dollars per bomb. That's wild.
Going to war with a nation costs more than free trade with that nation. There's no need for a bigger nation to expand their empire and risk the loss of money and the loss of life of their citizens when the other nation is willing to accept less payment for basically the same benefit. And so they just have no need for war at that point. Or to put it simply, as you move more and more towards capitalism or a free market, you also just create more of a natural incentive towards peaceful resolutions. And so now going back to this whole, oh, well, the Soviets fought the Nazis, the cope fully reveals itself. Because two authoritarian regimes fighting each other is actually expected product behavior. In truth, the only real difference back then between fascism and communism, at least in terms of comparing the ideology of the Soviet Union to Nazi Germany, was that Hitler's socialism was more on the lines of ethnic class, whereas Joseph Stalin was more closely following Marx's class theory, which was based more on economic class, which was specifically based on who owns the means of production or not. Which is very interesting considering the next meme we're gonna go over, which is this one right here. White male shoots up elementary school, thoughts and prayers. Someone harms a Tesla. Domestic terrorism. And of course, it's a flower.
White male shoots up elementary school, thoughts and prayers. Someone harms a Tesla. Domestic terrorism.
wearing a MAGA hat in order to signify the typical conservative. Now, before really getting into this,
Yeah, like what? It's not even the same.
and what it means, it shows something interesting, which is that it's based a little bit on ethnic class. And that's just what's so funny about how today's communists like to make their entire identity about being anti-fascist. Because of course, modern neo-Marxist strains of communism in the post-2000s.
Oh, wasn't there like a shooter? Yo, Julio, you got some shit on that? I wanna. I don't know anything about it. I heard about it, but I didn't actually look into it.
Is actually closer to being between fascism and communism, in that it puts a focus on ethnic class identity and ethnic collective guilt, and integrates it as an additional component of Marxist ideology. The only real difference is now they're blaming the whites instead of blaming...
Wait, you are... Hold on, what? You're my slave now. Your land and some of your women are... You're a terrorist. You're the enemy and you spread diseases? Get out of my country for... Hold on. This is just ignorant of history. This is the problem of this. This is like intentionally like ignorant of history. Prior to the modern era, everybody fucking killed each other. That's just what they did in history. People killed each other and they enslaved each other. In fact, they had some of the OG slaveholders in Africa, actually. You know? The OG like mass slave owners in Africa. Yeah, what are we even talking about? Yeah, and Africans sold other Africans in slavery, so that's that one. And this one, your land and some of your women are mine now? I mean, like, so what? Were they just, like, sitting around and, like, just chilling before, like, white people got there? You know, like, they didn't, like, wipe out each other's tribes, like, back before white people... Like, this is the thing. It's like people act like white people arrived, and then, like... And then they brought all this stuff, which is just not historically accurate. This is just like I don't know. Are they? Do they actually not know? Or are they intentionally just doing this to fit their narrative? It's like, I can't tell. Like, are they actually like dumb and they don't understand? They don't understand history, or are they actually just doing this on purpose? Isn't Leaflit upset about Hiroshima? What do you mean? Why would I be upset about Hiroshima? You know I'm American, right? Anyway.
Communism, in that it puts a focus on ethnic class identity and ethnic collective guilt, and integrates it as an additional component of Marxist ideology. The only real difference is now they're blaming the whites instead of blaming everything on the Jews. So that's just kind of a funny thing to think about, but what's really...
That's so true.
And integrates it as an additional component of Marxist ideology. The only real difference is now they're blaming the whites instead of blaming everything on the Jews.
Well, the funny thing is, about that, guys, about that, they kind of do that too. So it's kind of both now, really, if you think about it.
So that's just kind of a funny thing to think about, but what's really interesting here is just the kind of false comparison fallacy, and how communists are, again, just kind of logic blind when it comes to the concept of incentives. Back when
none of this, like, again, like, just going back to what I said earlier, all of that historic stuff was happening well before white people arrived anywhere. And to be honest, like, the reason why we, if you want to blame white people for sacking all of those places, then I mean, like, can we at least say that, well, that's what brought about the peaceful world that we have now? We wouldn't have that without that even occurring. Well, at least peaceful relatively. Like, I'm gonna be real, like, it's not, I mean, obviously, like, there's places in the world that aren't peaceful, but like, my life right now, I'm not worried about anything, really. Right? Except political violence. But, you know, I'm not really worried about, like, another country, like, fucking blowing me up, like, to be honest. Right? Like, let's be real. Like, we have it, like, compared to any other time in history, if you're gonna say I'm bullshit, think about any other time in history, and, like, think about how good we have it right now. Like, holy fuck. Like, if you lived in, like, the medieval ages, like, some fucking barbarians could just roll up on your city and just kill everyone. Just because they feel like it. Like, bandits just walk in like, yo, I'm taking all your shit. Oh, yeah, your wife? She's mine now. Right? Oh, your daughter? Yeah, she's my slave. They would do this all the time back in the day. Are we fucking crazy? Like, yeah, they would just do this constantly.
Lefties were burning people's Teslas. What made that an act of domestic terrorism was that they were trying to say, hey, if you buy these products from this guy that we hate, we're going to destroy it and you will have wasted your money. And that's, well, what
it's terrorism. Yep.
Domestic terrorism is.
It's political terrorism, obviously.
It's an attempt to use violence in order to instill fear into a population, in order to get that population to do
in order to go against Elon Musk, who was, you know, he was kind of a, you know, he's working with Trump at the time. He's doing Doge, doing a lot of things they didn't like politically. So it's political terrorism, obviously.
What you want. And so vandalizing Teslas as a political statement was just a way of getting people less likely to buy them out of fear that their car could be targeted. And then
my conspiracy theory, by the way, is that the whole fallout with conspiracy theory. The whole fallout between Trump and Elon was basically like to get people to back off of him, so that like Elon's businesses wouldn't be as affected. That's my conspiracy theory. That's my mom's conspiracy theory, actually. I don't know if it's real or not. It's just possible, right? You didn't know he's crashing. Wait, he's crashing out again? No, hold on. Elon Musk crash out? No, man, this guy needs to get. Is he really, man? Can they just have some makeup sex? Like, come on, man.
School shootings, well, some of them are also domestic terrorism. Occasionally a school shooter will publish some deranged manifesto, but the problem is a lot of times those manifestos don't really have
was that Elliot Rogers, the Supreme Gentleman?
Same kick behind them as a more scaled operation.
Dude, this guy's stuff is crazy. Have you guys ever seen this guy's stuff? It's like online. You can watch it. It's like him, like incel seething, like every video.
As mass vandalism does, because you have more than one participant. When the participant of some deranged school shooting manifesto ends up getting...
I can't believe that these women, that they would get with these other guys when they have someone like me. I'm the ultimate gentleman. I'm attractive. I have a nice car. But all of these women, they go after these jerks. And it's just him seething like that, like for many videos, actually. He ended up shooting up a bunch of places, actually. Killed a bunch of people in Santa Barbara, I think.
Being killed during the shooting, well, then the fear component and the incentives that it creates just kind of goes away. Nobody cares. And then, of course, a lot of school shootings, there's just no manifesto at all. It's just some deranged teenager.
Yeah, he was literally talking like that, by the way. Like the way I was talking right now, that wasn't me over exaggerating it. That was me under exaggerating it. Like he was literally like that. He literally talked like that.
Young adult who is just taking out their anger on innocent people. That's what makes this such a stupid meme. The implication it's trying to make just doesn't really hold up. And it also just kind of implies a false accusation here. This accusation that the right doesn't want to do anything about school shootings, or that the right somehow enjoys the school shootings. Accusations which are just completely and obviously false. So it's also a very bad meme in that regard. It kind of lacks that humorous punch because what it's implying doesn't actually make any sense. And faulty comparisons are actually kind of a feature of communist memes rather than a bug. They're very, very common. Like, for example, this meme, which interestingly enough is another example of ethno-collectivism, but that's not what's important here. Stating, never forget that the Black Panthers group formed to protect black people from the KKK was dismantled by US government, but the KKK exists today. Now, this right here is an example of just pure communist lying and propaganda. First off, the meme conveniently leaves out the fact that it's talking specifically about the Black Panther Party, which was an actual Marxist-Leninist political party in the United States founded back in the 1960s. So already it's comparing apples to oranges, because we're comparing the state regulating itself with a more private-oriented organization. To understand why this is a bad comparison, though, you kind of have to understand that the Black Panther Party can be compared somewhat to the current modern-day South African Party or the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Yo, are these the ones that are saying to like kill the farmers? Is that these guys?
They held relatively similar views to that. And so the EFF...
The KKK has no political power at all? Well, if we keep it up, they're about to. If we keep up like the modern day leftist rhetoric, then they're about to have power.
EFF gives us a better idea of what the Black Panthers would have turned into. To make a long story short, the whole claim here that the Black Panther group was formed to protect black people from the KKK is entirely dishonest.
I don't want that. That's what I've been worried about the whole time, is the swinging of the pendulum. The pendulum's gonna swing so fucking hard, like in the other direction, that it's gonna be bad.
Marxist-Leninist takes on ethnic class ultimately is a precursor.
I hope it's a big nothing burger. I hope like everyone calms down, nothing happens, but people don't know when to stop.
To class warfare. They were not solving a racial problem, but rather they were racial agitators, intentionally making the problems worse, while falsely claiming to do the opposite. Also, the claim that they've been dismantled, but the KKK exists today, that's also kind of a half-truth. Yes, the KKK still exists today, but they're virtually powerless, and let's be honest, they're a laughingstock. And on the flip side, while the Black Panther Party, the actual political group, yeah, sure, they're gone, but there's plenty of private groups that exist today that preach similar philosophy. One of them, again, just being modern neo-Marxism, but mainly—
Wait, there's a well, hold up. The Pink Panthers? Is it LGBT rights organization? Wait, there's a gay Black Panthers called the Pink Panthers?
this kind of meme
That's
just
crazy.
shows how communist—
Thank you for the bits, HSV Dragon King. Thank you so much. Remember when another country got famine because they got rid of their farmers?
like to pretend to be the good guys in terms of racial relations. They like to pretend
It's gonna be interesting, is what I'll say.
like they're going to resolve or fix or get rid of racism, when in reality, intentional agitation of ethnic issues is just one of their tricks to get what they want. In fact, a lot of communist memes, rather than being designed to be funny, are more or less just designed to take advantage of people's emotions and appeal to moralistic arguments in order to shut down critical thinking. Like this one right here: the life of a single human being is worth 1,000,000 times more than all of the property of the richest man on earth. Che. Now, this little quote right here—
The life of a single human being is worth 1,000,000 times more than all the property of the richest man. Hold on. The life of a single human being is worth 1,000,000 times more than all of the property of the richest man on earth. That's not true. Why is it not true? Yeah, Veet. Because when you think about, okay, so it is. All right, how do I explain this? How do I explain this in a way that doesn't make me sound like an asshole? All right, hold on. So there's multiple ways you could read this quote. Like, does he mean that the life of a single person is worth 1,000,000 times more than the property of the richest man on earth? As in, like, if the richest man on earth held the money and didn't do anything? Because there are factors that change the value of human life. Yes, exactly. That's my point. What Julio said. That's what I'm thinking. Because the thing is you could use money to save human lives as well, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. If you had $1 million, for instance, you could save plenty of people. So the idea that the richest, I mean, I don't know, like let's not even, it doesn't even have to be the richest man on earth. I mean, you could say like, I don't know, someone that's worth, I don't know, how much is Elon Musk worth? Okay, guys, okay. How much is Elon Musk worth? Okay, $409 billion, right? Like, you could save plenty of people's lives for $409 billion. Right, so like if you were to, this becomes kind of like a trolley question, which, my answer to the trolley question is different than like, I have a kind of non-interventionist trolley, like my take on the whole trolley problem is I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to be responsible for it. But I think you could make the argument that if there was one person's life on the line, but that would create $409 billion, that you would take that and then you could use the $409 billion to save more people. So I don't even think this is true, even literally. You can't measure human lives in dollars, but we do it all the time. We do it all the time, Dredger. We're constantly weighing like how much a human's life is worth. Whether we like it or not, that's just reality.
Here, rather than being a meme, is just really good moralistic propaganda. Because in a sense, in a very pedantic way, it's kind of true. If you ever found yourself in a situation where pressing one button results in the richest man losing the titles to all of his mansions. And
okay, see if it was, okay, see, again, a different interpretation. In this interpretation, like you could say it's true then.
Pressing the other button results in a random person dying. Well, both buttons are evil, but generally physical.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if this is the interpretation, see, do you see what I mean? the interpretation is different because like it depends. Like, do you attain the other by losing one? Right? Do you attain the other by losing one of them?
Property is worth less than the life of another. The problem, of course, is that this is a false dichotomy, and it's trying to trick you into transferring that false dichotomy into communist thinking. In reality land, adopting the ideology of stealing property from the rich is actually a very stupid thing to do because it again kills incentives. Again, communists are logic blind when it comes to incentives. What that actually...
I mean, you could make the argument that communism kills a lot of people too. I mean, just like historically.
Does in practice is it just destroys economic growth, which interestingly enough, lower economic growth results in more
people having lower economic growth, worse economy, lower production of resources, less food, people starve, like etc. all the way down the hill, right?
People dying. Because what this propaganda is trying to trick you into not noticing is that communism doesn't actually resolve scarcity in any way. Their ideology, pushed to its logical conclusion, does the exact opposite of what this image is claiming. And ultimately,
again, because of human nature, incentive is incentive like dopamine. It's the driver of human nature, right?
It also shows us that a lot of communist memes, when you peel back the nonsense, well, they reveal themselves to be a little more than just attempts to justify violence and theft. And so let's go over one last meme that really showcases this. Know the work rules, and we have Luigi Mangione here saying that he killed a CEO. It is deemed as appropriate, with the woman saying, "Aw, you're sweet." And then Joseph Stalin saying the same thing, but he killed a lot of CEOs.
Wait, what? Hold on. I killed the CEO. Oh, you're so sweet. I killed a lot of CEOs. Wait. I don't even agree with this, though. This is nasty. I don't even agree with the first panel. Like, that's gross. Fucking crackheads.
Hello, human resources. Now, aside from just trying to justify violence, the real point of this meme is to take those philosophically illiterate left-leaning liberals and try to push them further to the left. It's communists saying, hey, if you're a liberal and you sympathize with Luigi Mangione, then you're a hypocrite if you don't also support Joseph Stalin. And here's the funny thing, on a pedantic level, they're correct. Their ideology, of course, isn't correct here. Murdering people in cold blood is absolutely not a good thing, but it is correct in the sense that liberal leftists who think this way, if they were to take their thoughts and their beliefs to their logical conclusions, then yes, they would become Marxists. Now, of course, that's not the correct conclusion they should come to. The correct conclusion would be them realizing that liberty and the free exchange of goods and services is actually incompatible with any kind of leftist ideology. But that doesn't really matter, because the thing about good communist propaganda is that a lot of
are exhausting,
it can be understood as coming in two different waves.
Fucking psychos.
The first wave is to try and trick people into thinking that right-wing ideology is evil, or in other words, if you're a rightoid in any way, shape, or form, then you're literally bad mustache man. And then the other part of their propaganda is to try and give the liberals a false choice between themselves and, again, literally bad mustache man. And so the strategy of the propaganda behind this meme is to try and take your typical brainwashed neo-lib, sort of soc-just lefty type who sympathizes with Luigi, and to put them in a choice between either taking what they believe in, pushing it to its logical conclusions and becoming a tanky, or to accept that they're wrong. And since people don't like accepting that they're wrong, the target is thus successfully brainwashed into adopting.
Actually, this is... Wait, hold on. Actually, this meme's kind of good. Am I the only one that thinks this is actually this is actually spot on?
Wrong, and since people don't like accepting that they're wrong, the target is thus successfully brainwashed into adopting neo-Marxist ideology. And that's another reason why so many far-left memes are so bad. They're not really intended to be funny, they're just intended to brainwash a very specific target. And so their goals are often just indoctrination mixed with virtue.
I see. So basically, like, what he's saying is that the memes on the right are honestly just to show the irony and laugh at it because it's so funny. Because because the world is a fucking clown comedy right now, whereas the leftist memes are basically to indoctrinate, so they're not really that funny. That makes sense.
And so hopefully you now understand why so many of them at the surface don't really seem to make any sense, or seem to be just words. They are neither grounded in truth, nor are they intended to be. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and if you like my content and you want to support me, you can do so on Ko-Fi, Subscribestar, or again by buying some merch, and I'm putting the Doge Wave merch on a temporary sale. So yeah, that is all. Till next time.
I really like that video. I always like Mentis videos though. Mentis always has such good videos. I'm going to link you guys a video. Make sure you guys give it a thumbs up if you can. And share it with your friends for more of that stuff.